Santa Monica, St. John's Hospital. February 1965. The security guard stood at the door and looked at the man in front of him. "I'm sorry, sir. Mr. Cole is not accepting any visitors. Doctor's orders." The man didn't reach into his pocket. He didn't show any identification. He just smiled that familiar, easy smile that had charmed millions and said, "Tell him Bing is here. He's been waiting for me since 1938. The guard froze. Standing before him was the most famous voice in America. But wasn't the man lying inside that room the same thing? Two voices, two legends, one goodbye. What happened in that hospital room that night became one of Hollywood's most closely guarded secrets. A story of friendship that transcended race, fame, and even death itself. And no one told this story. Until now. To understand what happened in that hospital room, we need to go back 27 years. Back to a smoky Los Angeles restaurant in 1938, where a young black pianist was playing for tips and trying to survive. His name was Nathaniel Adams Coles. He was 19 years old, had $12 in his pocket, and a dream that seemed impossibly far away. Every night, he played piano at Jim Otto's Steakhouse, a small club where the wealthy elite of Hollywood would occasionally wander in for a late-night drink. Most nights, nobody paid attention to the young man at the piano. He was background music. Invisible. Just another struggling musician in a city full of them. But one night in 1938, everything changed. Bing Crosby was relaxing in his hotel room nearby when he heard something that made him sit up straight. Drifting through his window was a piano sound unlike anything he'd ever heard. Smooth, sophisticated, with a rhythm that seemed to make the notes dance. Crosby got dressed and followed the music to Jim Otto's Steakhouse. He walked in and saw the skinny young black kid playing piano with a technique that would have impressed Rachmaninoff and a swing that would have made Duke Ellington jealous. For the next 2 hours, Bing Crosby sat in that restaurant, nursing a single drink, completely mesmerized. When the set ended, Crosby did something that would change the course of music history. He walked up to the young pianist and said, "Son, what's your name?" "Nat Cole, sir." "Well, Nat Cole, how would you like to be on national radio?" The young man thought it was a joke. Black musicians didn't get on national radio in 1938. That wasn't how America worked. But Bing Crosby wasn't joking. Within weeks, Bing had brought the Nat King Cole trio onto his Kraft Music Hall radio program. It was one of the most popular shows in America, and suddenly, this unknown pianist from a Los Angeles steakhouse was being heard by millions. But Crosby didn't stop there. He introduced Nat to Johnny Mercer, who was about to found a new record company called Capitol Records. Mercer signed Nat Cole as one of Capitol's first artists. It was the beginning of a legendary partnership that would produce some of the most beloved recordings in American music history. Straighten Up and Fly Right, Route 66. For Sentimental Reasons. Hit after hit after hit. By 1946, Nat King Cole had become so successful that he was asked to host the summer replacement for Bing Crosby's own radio show. Think about that for a moment. In 1946, in segregated America, a black man was hosting a national radio program. It was the first time this had ever happened in broadcasting history. And it happened because Bing Crosby believed in him when nobody else did. Over the next 2 decades, Bing and Nat developed a friendship that defied the racial boundaries of their era. In public, they were colleagues and mutual admirers. In private, they were something closer to brothers. When Nat bought a house in the exclusive Hancock Park neighborhood of Los Angeles in 1948, his white neighbors burned a cross on his lawn and demanded he leave. The Ku Klux Klan sent death threats. Real estate agents tried to buy him out. Nat Cole refused to move. And when reporters asked Bing Crosby what he thought about a black family moving into an all-white neighborhood, Bing's response was simple. "I think Nat Cole can live wherever he damn well pleases. And anyone who disagrees can take it up with me." In 1956, when Nat became the first black performer to host his own network television variety show, Bing was one of his first guests. The show struggled to find national sponsors because advertisers were afraid of alienating Southern viewers. It was eventually canceled after just one season. Nat was devastated. He had broken every barrier, achieved every success, and still the color of his skin was used against him. Bing called him that night. "Nat, you listen to me. What you did matters. You opened a door that can never be closed again. And one day, this country is going to thank you for it." Those words kept Nat going through some of his darkest moments. In September 1964, something was wrong. Nat had been coughing for months. He blamed it on the cigarettes. Like most performers of his era, he smoked constantly. 3 packs a day of cool menthols. He believed, as many did then, that smoking gave his voice its distinctively smooth, low quality. But this cough was different. It wouldn't stop. And then came the chest pains. On December 7, 1964, Nat King Cole checked into St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. The diagnosis was devastating: advanced lung cancer. The tumor had already spread. Doctors gave him weeks, maybe months if he was lucky. The news hit Hollywood like a thunderbolt. Nat King Cole was only 45 years old. He was at the height of his powers. His latest album, LOVE, had just been recorded days before he entered the hospital. It would become his final studio recording. As word spread about Nat's condition, something remarkable happened. Letters and cards poured in from around the world. Hundreds of thousands of them. From fans, from fellow musicians, from world leaders. Frank Sinatra sent flowers every day. Count Basie called constantly. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote a personal letter of support. Even Jacqueline Kennedy, the former First Lady, sent a handwritten note. But visiting Nat in person was nearly impossible. The doctors had implemented strict protocols. Only immediate family and the closest friends were permitted brief 5-minute visits. Nat was too weak for more than that. The cancer was progressing rapidly. Jet magazine ran a heartbreaking headline: "Nat King Cole fights for his life, alone." It wasn't entirely true, of course. His wife Maria was by his side constantly. His children visited when they could. But the Hollywood community that had celebrated him for 2 decades seemed to keep its distance. Death made people uncomfortable. Nobody knew what to say, and so many said nothing at all. Bing Crosby read the Jet magazine article in his Holmby Hills home. He set down the magazine and stared out the window for a long time. 27 years. He remembered that skinny kid at Jim Otto's steakhouse. He remembered the first time Nat walked into the Kraft Music Hall studio, so nervous he could barely speak. He remembered the night Nat called him, devastated, after his TV show was canceled. And now that same man was lying in a hospital bed, fighting for his life, while the world kept its distance. Bing picked up the phone and called the hospital. "I'd like to visit Nat Cole." "I'm sorry, Mr. Crosby. Mr. Cole's visitor list is extremely limited. Doctor's orders. Only immediate family." "I understand. Tell Nat that Bing called. Tell him I'm thinking of him." He hung up the phone, but something gnawed at him. This wasn't right. You don't abandon your friends when they need you most. You don't let rules and protocols keep you from saying goodbye to someone who changed your life. The next morning, Bing Crosby drove to St. John's Hospital. The security guard recognized him immediately, of course. Everyone recognized Bing Crosby. "Mr. Crosby, I'm sorry, but Mr. Cole isn't." "Son, I know what the rules say, but I've known that man in there for 27 years. I gave him his first break. I watched him become one of the greatest artists this country has ever produced. And I am not going to let him leave this world without saying goodbye." The guard hesitated. He was just doing his job. But there was something in Bing's voice, a quiet determination that was impossible to refuse. "Let me check with the nurses." A few minutes later, Bing Crosby was escorted down the hallway to room 314. The door opened. What Bing saw broke his heart. Nat King Cole, the man with the velvet voice, the man who had sold more records than almost anyone in history, lay in a hospital bed looking like a shadow of himself. He had lost 30 pounds. His skin was gray. An oxygen tube ran under his nose. But when Nat saw who was standing in the doorway, something happened. His eyes lit up. Bing! The word came out as barely a whisper. The cancer had taken so much from him, including, cruelly, his voice. Bing walked to the bedside and took Nat's hand. "Hey, partner. You didn't think I'd let you have all the peace and quiet to yourself, did you?" Nat managed a weak smile. "They told me, no visitors. Since when do I follow rules?" For the next hour, the two men talked. Or rather, Bing talked and Nat listened, occasionally whispering responses. They talked about the old days, about Jim Otto's steakhouse, about the Kraft Music Hall, about all the battles Nat had fought and won just to be treated as an equal in an unequal world. "You know what I remember most?" Bing said. "That first night I heard you play. I was in my hotel room, window open, and your music came floating in like something from another world. I thought to myself, that's not just talent. That's a gift from God." And I was right. Nat's eyes glistened with tears. Then Bing did something that the nurses outside could hardly believe. He started to sing, softly, gently, the opening notes of Unforgettable. Unforgettable. That's what you are. And then the impossible happened. Nat King Cole, the man who could barely whisper, the man whose voice had been stolen by cancer, began to sing along. It wasn't the voice that had sold millions of records. It was barely audible, but it was there. Two old friends singing together one last time. Unforgettable. Though near or far. The nurses gathered outside the door, listening in silence. Some of them were crying. When the song ended, Nat squeezed Bing's hand. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything. For 1938. For believing in me." Bing couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears streaming down his face. Bing Crosby visited Nat King Cole 3 more times before the end. On February 14, 1965, Valentine's Day, Nat was allowed to leave the hospital briefly. He and his wife Maria took a short drive along the ocean. It was the last time he would see the sea. The next morning, February 15, 1965, at 5:30 a.m., Nat King Cole passed away. He was 45 years old. Maria Cole later told friends about Bing's visits. "After Bing came that first time," she said, "Nat wasn't afraid anymore. He knew he was loved. He knew he wouldn't be forgotten." 3 days later, over 3,000 people gathered outside St. James Episcopal Church in Los Angeles for Nat's funeral. Inside, 400 invited guests paid their respects. Frank Sinatra was there. Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Count Basie, Robert Kennedy, the Governor of California. Jack Benny delivered the eulogy. "Nat Cole was a man who gave so much and still had so much to give," he said. "He was a star, a tremendous success as an entertainer, an institution. But he was an even greater success as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a friend." Bing Crosby sat in the back row. He didn't speak publicly about Nat's death for months. When he finally did, in a rare interview, his words were simple. "Nat Cole was the finest man I ever knew in this business. He had more talent in his little finger than most of us have in our whole bodies. But more than that, he had dignity, grace under pressure. He faced things that would have broken most men, and he never lost his kindness. The world is poorer without him. And so am I." Nat King Cole's music has never stopped playing. The Christmas song remains one of the most beloved holiday recordings ever made. Unforgettable was given new life in 1991 when his daughter Natalie recorded a virtual duet with her father's original vocals. It won multiple Grammy Awards and introduced Nat to a whole new generation. But perhaps the most important part of Nat's legacy is what Bing Crosby said all those years ago, on the night his TV show was canceled. "You opened a door that can never be closed again." Nat King Cole was the first black artist to host a national radio program, the first black performer to host a network television variety show, one of the first black families to integrate an all-white neighborhood in Los Angeles. He didn't just make music. He made history. And it all started because one night in 1938, Bing Crosby heard a piano playing through his hotel window and decided to find out who was making that beautiful sound. The story of Bing Crosby and Nat King Cole reminds us that true friendship knows no boundaries. Not race, not fame, not even death. In an era of segregation and hatred, these two men showed what was possible when you saw people for who they truly were, not what society told you they should be. Bing could have ignored that young pianist in 1938. He could have enjoyed the music and gone back to his hotel room. Instead, he changed a life. He changed music history, and he gained a friend whose memory he carried until his own death in 1977. When someone asked Bing late in his life what he was most proud of in his long career, he didn't mention his Oscar. He didn't mention White Christmas. He didn't mention any of his films or radio shows. He said, "I'm proud that I helped a few people along the way, and I'm proud that some of them became my friends." Nat King Cole would have smiled at that. Unforgettable. That's what they both were. If this story of friendship, loyalty, and the power of believing in someone moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the kind of friendship that transcends everything. Have you ever had a mentor or friend who believed in you when no one else did? Let us know in the comments. And remember, the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money or fame. It's seeing their potential when they can't see it themselves. Until next time, keep the music playing.